Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. We'll talk about RIA Money Transfer, supercharging complex AML and financial crime investigations. My name is Jean Villedieu. I'm one of the co-founders of Linkurious, where I'm managing director. And for today's session, I will be joined by Miguel.
Hello everyone. I'm Miguel. I'm working for RIA Money Transfer for the last 10 years. And it's my pleasure to be here today. Thank you, Jean.
Thank you so much, Miguel. So a quick word of introduction about Linkurious. Linkurious as a company was founded in 2013. Right now we have two offices, one in France, in Paris, and another one in the US. We are a team of 50 plus employees, and we are serving some 4,000 analysts worldwide who are all using Linkurious Enterprise to conduct complex investigations. You can see some of our key partners here. We are working very closely with Neo4j and Microsoft, but also with Deloitte, PwC, Capgemini, and Dataiku. Today, we have more than 100 clients throughout the world. Among them, there are Zurich Insurance, one of the major insurance companies in the world. We're also working closely with His Majesty's Revenues and Custom, the UK Tax Office, and we are also working with Pioneer, Dun & Bradstreet, RIA, and Airbus. So you can see some of those clients and partners in this slide. So now, quick word about the agenda of today's session. We'll start with a brief introduction about graph science. Then we'll talk about benefits of graph in the fight against financial crime. After that, we'll talk about battling it out, traditional approaches versus the graph approach. Then we'll talk about managing regulatory expectations with graph technology. Then we'll spend some time with a demo, and finally a Q&A. So that's it for today's agenda. And now I would like to pass the baton to you, Miguel.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Well, a very quick introduction of myself. I have been working in the financial industry for the more than 15 years. I started in 2007 working at PayPal. Already in a compliance role. Later on, I worked for MoneyGram for a few years, and for the last 10 years, I have been working in RIA Money Transfer in different jurisdictions in Europe, in Malaysia, and most recently in Australia. So I also play a compliance oversight role in other companies of Euronet Group, like Exit.com and ePay. About RIA, very quick introduction. Has been in the market for more than 30 years. Is operating in more than 165 countries, and many of them with their own license. So only in Europe, RIA holds more than 20 licenses. Also, we operate under our own license in US, Canada, Chile, Mexico, South Africa, more than 7 countries in Asia Pacific as well. So we are under a high regulatory pressure, and that's what the main reason that we are using Linkurious as part of our financial crime prevention activities. So let's start. I'm going to explain a little bit about who use Linkurious with the graph technology, what it's used for, and how we use it. So the first question will be who use this technology. So this, in our business case, we use for the financial investigation unit that is in charge of post-transactional analysis. So we are not using Linkurious in any single analysis, but those that require specific features that Linkurious is providing, especially related to link analysis and networking. Also, it may help in the real-time monitoring, but currently we are using only on post-transactional basis. This image shows how the graph looks like in the system, And in which scenarios we use it? The main scenarios when we are applying this technology is in fraud rings, when we can determine, starting by one specific fraud scenario, fraud case, we can find more leads of other victims or other fraudsters involved in the same ring. So this technology allows us to find hidden links between individuals or transactions. We are also, when we receive a law enforcement request or police request about a specific predicate offense, we use Linkurious to determine the scope of the activity that we are investigating. So especially when it's related to terrorism, sex exploitation, human trafficking, or any other serious predicate offense, Linkurious is acquiring more value. So how we use it is mainly through two different ways, I will say. One is address investigation, when you start with one specific starting point, one individual, one transaction, and from there you can expand the network to determine any individuals involved or transactions involved in that activity. So usually the way that we work with Linkurious at RIA is by layers. So these layers is the individual that we are investigating will be in the center. Then we can create a first circle all around the connections of this person. So for example, this sender will be connecting to a beneficiary. This is one transaction. So in the graph model, you have the nodes, that is the central point of the graph, that are connecting to other nodes through the relationships or edges. And then each node or relationship has a number of properties. So that is the three main features of the graph: the node, the relationship, and the properties. With this, you should create your own data model, depending on your needs, on your business, and your structure. So in the case of RIA, the most basic part of the data model is the sender and the beneficiary connected through the transaction. But then there is other information that can be also property or node. For example, the age of the customer or the age of the beneficiary is going to be one property. But the phone number is going to be another node, because two different senders or two different beneficiaries may share the same phone number. And this is a strong link. But the fact that they are in the same age, for example, is not strong, is not creating a relationship. Just because two different customers are 31 years old is not making a relationship between them. But it's a property that may be interesting. If we are investigating a fraud that is related to affecting elder people, the age is important. But we are not going to make a link because of the age. But we can make a link because of the phone number. Here, for example, we have another sender with the same phone number. So this is one very simple graph when we can start investigating one sender and one beneficiary, but this investigation drive us through another sender that is strongly linked. Other strong links is the bank account where the money has been sourced, can be the address, can be the IP address, or any other information that is relevant in your data model. And in that way, you can create links in one single graph that make relationship with any other customer in your database that are using the same key information that has been defined as a node. Once you have your graph, there is certain functionalities that Linkurious has and bring a lot of value to the investigation. One of them is the shortest path, that you can take two nodes that not necessarily are linked, but you are going to find how they are connected by the shortest path. So you may select randomly 2 customers that you have any ground of suspicion that can be related, and the graph automatically will determine what is the connection among them. You can create your query templates. That is a way to automate the steps that you follow during the expansion of the graph. You can create alerts. That is the second part. So the first part is your investigation, that you are expanding and building the graph by expanding nodes and relationships. But you can create alerts that when a certain scenario happens, Linkurious is going to generate an alert, one number of alerts that then you can review through a case management functionality. In our data model, transaction is a relationship, an edge. So we can group edges when we have one sender and one beneficiary that has maybe 10 transactions is going to create 10 relationships. We can merge all these 10 relationships into one just to simplify the graph, but keeping all the information within the graph. Also, playing with the graph, you can create filters and hiding certain edges or nodes that are not interesting in your investigation. The example I mentioned before, you are investigating a fraud ring that is affecting to elder customers. You may filter by the age, that is one of the properties of the sender, and say, okay, I only want to focus my visualization in customers older than 60 years old. With the filters, you can hide the younger customers, for example. Another way to filter the graph, the visualization, is through the timeline. So with the timeline, you can select the period of time that you are interested on. And it can be used by any field that is a date. The most common is the transaction date. So you can only focus on what happened in the last year. With timeline, you can move the graph through the time and showing a specific moment in time. And the last feature I want to highlight today is that you can publish the visualization and share with third parties. So it's going to create a link that you can attach to your suspicious activity report, or you can share with other teams, other companies of the group, and they can receive this link and explore the graph through the link without having a license or having any program installed in the computer, because this is just a web link. Okay, in the next part, I will to explain the benefits of using the graph technology. So the main reason why RIA acquired Linkurious and Neo4j technology was back in 2014 when we had an inspection from the Dutch regulator. They had already this technology. They were doing an audit and they bring a paper or as big as a table with all the networks they were finding within our transactions. And they were challenging the fact that we were not able to detect such activities because of the complex networking of customers. The reality is that accomplishing this level of complexity of the connections, it will be very, very time consuming with the old fashioned technologies like Excel sheet, almost impossible actually. And that was what triggered the need of implementing a Linkurious. But it's not only that. This is one of the alerts that we created for the Dutch case. Whenever there is at least 2 customers sending to the same 3 beneficiaries, it's going to create an alert. And the network can be as big as it can be. If there is no limit in complexity, but this is the most simple network the alert is going to create, but it's going to show you the complete network. So the results was really good. And actually in the next audit that we received from the Dutch regulator, they were very, very satisfied with the results of the enhancement that we do in our controls through this technology. So if we compare this technology with the way that we use before with Excel mainly, it was the technology we were using to accomplish this kind of investigations. One of the first constraints is the limited size of data digestions that we had in Excel. Before it was smaller, now it's about 1 million lines, but the point is that how slow it can be when you are managing a huge amount of information. And in the busiest day of the year, RIA may be transacting 1 million transactions in one single day. So it's really difficult when you want to cross over all your network. With the Neo4j database, the digestion of data is super fast, and actually we have a real-time connector that all the transactions in real time are digested by Neo4j almost in real time with a delay maximum of 3-4 minutes. So anything that is happening in RIA in any part of the world is in Linkurious within 3-4 minutes. Second constraint is we were not able to identify complex schemas and patterns. That's what happened exactly with the Dutch audit. At some level, you can search one phone number. How many customers are using this phone number? It's a query that you can make on a tabular database. Or how many customers are using one specific address or one specific IP address or one specific bank account. But if you want to do everything at the same time with a multiple customers and multiple different leads, it's almost impossible. And this is what you can achieve with Linkurious. You can have 10, 20, 30 customers in your visualization, and in one click to see any other customer that are linked by any of those fields that you have determined previously on your data model. The adaptability, talking about the data model, is something that we fine-tune almost every year. We adapt the data model to the needs of the business, and it's quite easy to add a new node. One big change that we made from the first data model to the subsequent version is that the transaction was a node in the first data model. The newest data model, the transaction is a relationship. And this is a big change that add a lot of value because simplify the model and make it much more efficient. When you do this is related to the identifying complex schemas, you may not be considering certain factors. When we do one analysis that was performed before having Linkurious, and then we repeat the same analysis with Linkurious, we discover new leads and other things that we missed in the first investigation, and we find things that we missed initially. Generating number of false positives. So this is going to depend of the efficiency of your data model and how you define the alerts. The good thing is if your data model is well designed and the properties selected correctly, you can create a very specific queries. It's just a cipher code query that is, you can code almost anything that is in your mind. So you can make the alert as complex as you wish, considering as many factors as you wish, and that will reduce the number of false positives. And the last constraint that we usually have with the systems is the skills required to execute the monitoring. If we are operating, for example, in Excel with complex macros that need to be designed and fine-tuned, sometimes we require skills that a normal analyst may not have. To create queries in Cypher, you also will need someone skilled in programming Cypher, that's true. But the final user will find a very user-friendly interface when they can operate without a huge knowledge of technologies or graphs. Actually, in RIA, we have created a online training that in 1 hour, 2 hours maximum, one user can start using Linkurious. So it's quite straightforward. The last part of my presentation today is about the regulatory expectations. So when we are talking about the financial crime, financial investigation, there is three main obligations that you have. Is to detect the suspicious activities, report these suspicious activities to regulator, and mitigate them, avoid this to happen. If we are able to detect, report, and mitigate, we can say that your compliance program from the financial crime of view is effective. So we are going to see how Linkurious may help to detect and to mitigate, because reporting is something that is quite straightforward. So the capabilities of detection, so how you can detect suspicious transactions, is first need to be a risk-based, need to be dynamic, tailor-made, and scalable. These things you can achieve because if you create your data model that is going to be based on your specific needs, so it's going to be tailor-made, that can be easily adapted and modified once per year or more often if necessary, is going to be dynamic. And is going to be scalable in the sense that there is not actual limit in digestions of data. Then the risk-based is something that you can achieve with your alerts. You need to identify what is your risk through your risk assessment. And with that, you need to determine what is the risk that you want to mitigate. And then you can create alerts based on risk. So you will be applying a risk-based approach. That was in terms of detection. In terms of mitigation, so you already identified a suspicious activity, you have reported them, and now you need to avoid this to keep happening in your business. So it needs to be effective, need to be proportionate, durable, and updated. So again, this is something that maybe Linkurious in the mitigation is not the tool unless you integrate without your productive system, but it's going to give you a very clear visualization of what is happening and what you need to mitigate. So what is the specific patterns that you need to mitigate to create additional controls on blocking certain behaviors, customers, transactions, or setting up limits. So that's pretty much everything I want to share today. So Shen, if you wish, we can go through some of the questions.
So we do have some questions from the audience. I'm going to share them and let's get started. So first question, I think this one is for you, Miguel. We are starting a graph technology journey in our company for compliance analytics. I wanted to understand what are the do's and don'ts we need to keep in mind.
Okay, so the most important thing when you start is to create the data model. The data model is the key to make it works. So determining what is the node, what is the relationship, and which the properties. What, for example, which properties you want to index that is going to be searchable by Linkurious when you want to search for specific information. So the data model is very important. And the second thing that I think also to keep in mind is don't get lost in the graph. So when you can expand the graph unlimited. There is not something that is going to tell you this is not relevant anymore. In the theory of graphs, you can see that everybody at some point is connected with everybody. So if you don't have clear what is the methodology of the analysis and what you are looking for, and you keep expanding, you will see that all your database somehow they are connected. So that's why it's important, and the way that we do is a model of layers. So we select the layer. So we have one suspect. the beneficiaries of the suspect or the senders that are sending to this suspect is the first layer. That's very important for us. That still are in the suspicious ring. Then we need to see who else are linked, and this is stronger link than others. So this is something that, depending on your needs, your business, your data model, you need to determine what is relevant, what is not, to make sure you don't get lost in the graph. But if you have a clear idea what is the purpose that you are having Linkurious, you create a data model that is effective. Probably the first data model is not going to be the final. You will need to keep working with the data model and more things will come up. And it's like a never-ending process, updating the data model. You will be successful.
Great. We have another question. How easy was it to onboard your team of analysts and compliance officers?
So what I would say, like a normal analyst doing a normal investigation, is quite straightforward. As I mentioned before, one analyst can be if they have already understanding of the business. So we are assuming that the analyst knows the business, know the suspicious activity. So don't know about Linkurious, but knows everything else. If that's the case, you can train in a couple of hours how to use Linkurious. If this analyst has already have the analytic skills, it's going to be quite fast. Then you will need some maybe more senior analysts, maybe the senior, the supervisor, the manager, they need to understand in deep the data model, how to create your captions, because you can customize the graph. That will be more managed by the senior that maybe need further training. But for the normal analysis performing an investigation, is going to be quite easy. In a couple of hours, they can be doing analysis.
Okay, so we have other questions coming up. So here's the next one. What type of schemes are you able to disrupt now that you couldn't disrupt before using Linkurious Enterprise?
The main schemes that you can find is the higher complex networks and links, linking analysis. So it's when the relationship between two parties is not so evident. So if I'm sending money to someone else, that's very strong and it's very easy to detect. But if I send it to someone that sharing a phone number with someone that living in the same house, and that person is want to send to another person or receiving by another person, this kind of complexity, when you are and all are strong links, is what you are going to miss if you are not using graph database. I don't know if I explain myself, but but this level of connections by different links or type of links is almost impossible to keep linking individuals by phone, IP, address, bank account, email address, all at the same time. So and that will give a lot of value to your investigation, because at the end of the day, you can find other individuals that are part of the illegal activity that you are investigating.
Great. We have another question for you. How easy was it to integrate Linkurious Enterprise with your legacy systems?
Well, honestly, we don't have a big integration with our legacy systems, as we didn't have in the past. So this is a kind of analysis that we use in Excel before. We download the report, and from the report we work, and activity, or we attach the result of the analysis into the investigation. So now we are doing something similar. We create our visualization. Once it's finished, we publish or we save it, and we attach to as an attachment to the investigation or to the suspicious activity report. Having said that, it can be integrated. It's something that is in the scope, and it can be as simple as generating a graph from an URL. So you can, from your legacy system, you can create an URL with the nodes that you want to open and the expansion, and clicking on the link is going to directly open Linkurious with the graph that you have defined in the URL. It's something that we have been testing, but we have not implemented yet.
Great. There are some other questions coming up. So what are the most common use cases your clients are using Linkurious Enterprise for? So I'm going to take that one. So we have clients that are using the software for anti-financial crime. So we are working with money transfer companies such as RIA Money Transfer, but we are also working with banks that are using the software for KYC, for transaction monitoring, among other use cases. We are also working with tax agencies that are fighting back against fraud and tax evasion. We are also working with employment benefits organizations that are also fighting back against fraud. So that's just in the financial crime space. And then we also have contingent use cases, I would say, use cases that are close to anti-financial crime. So we have clients working on cybersecurity investigations. And we also have clients that are involved in law enforcement investigations. And then beyond financial crime, we actually have clients that are also using the software for complex investigations around supply chain, around data governance topics, among others. We have time for one final question. So, is there a free trial of Linkurious Enterprise? Yes, there's a free. I mean, it's possible to do a trial of Linkurious Enterprise. Simply reach out. So you can visit linkurious.com, or you can drop us an email at contact@linkurious.com. And with this last question, that's it for today. So thank you very much, Miguel.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And thank you everyone for attending today's session. Have a good rest of the day. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.